I genuinely want you to walk out of here after this 10 minutes feeling that's been a really useful investment of your time and to find something that's useful to you. In fact, I want to show you a method or a way of being 100% confident in anything you do for the rest of your life. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but that's my goal for this 10 minutes. Give you a method of how to be 100% confident in anything you choose to do the rest of your life. And secondly, a ritual or a routine, if you want to put it that way, that if you apply it will just eradicate 80% of all the so-called mental problems that come up in golf. About 8 or 9 years, my business has been 12 years, but 8 or 9 years working in golf locally, mostly youngsters, but when they come to me with some issue, first tee nerves, confidence, losing a bad shore, whatever it is, most of it will get eradicated if you just apply that ritual. So, to that extent, what I want to do is to, first, I'd love to find out exactly what your issues are, but we just certainly don't have time for that. But could you just say to the person next to you, if there was an issue for you around the mental side of golf or thinking or confidence, that if you eradicated it or got rid of it would really lower your scores or help you enjoy the game better? Is there one issue for you, or is there something you want to improve or build on the strength that you already have? So just for the person next to you, I mean literally 10 seconds each, if there was one thing that you'd want to eradicate around the mental side of golf or improve, what would it be? Just pick one thing. Okay, just a few more seconds, so if you hadn't said something. Okay, can I bring you back to the middle? If you've just got something in mind. So my reason for doing that is I want you just to tune into what this might be an issue for me, or I really want to build more of that. So as I go through this stuff, it could link to those things. I'd love to go around and find out what those things are, but time doesn't allow that. So just hold those things in your mind for a moment, and then I'll show you something that might immediately start to get you to think differently about that. There's two major issues or two major problems from where I'm coming from that stops us being brilliant at golf. So we said for a moment, David, could you just catch that for a minute? Do you help me out? Okay, do you mind standing up just for a second? Okay, thank you very much. So what enables David obviously to do that is just that something in the brain says send a message to all these muscles. If you started to think how far would your arm go back, when did you release it, what weight was on your right foot, left foot, you start to interfere with that natural brilliant process. You may never have thrown a golf ball exactly that distance in this temperature, blah, blah, blah. You have an innate ability to play golf, whether you think you have or not, but you do, or move. Your brain is amazing at working things out. But the moment we start to want to do that consciously, it interrupts it. So there's two major issues around the mental side of golf. One is we have a motor sensor in the brain which will send messages to the muscles that need to move for that golf swing. But the prefrontal cortex in here, where we do our thinking, wants to get involved in that process. If we start thinking about it, so if you think for 1 minute about your technique, or is it the 6-iron or a 7-iron, you interrupt that process, you sabotage that process. So one thing we're looking for is a fluid swing that we've all done, maybe more often than others, but we've all done at some point. You're looking for that fluid swing where you naturally just play it and you know it went where you wanted it to. The only thing that gets in the way of that is two things. One, the prefrontal cortex. So if you don't separate out your thinking in that shot ritual, it's likely to pop into your head while you're standing over the ball, which doesn't happen in many sports where you're just reacting, because there isn't time for that. You're just responding, so your unconscious mind does it beautifully. Golf's one of those few sports where you get too much time to think. The second thing is this idea of fight-flight response, or accessing some fear of some level. Now, of course, you're not in any real danger on a course. It's more your chimp brain, or I'll show you, but your unconscious mind, that you're fine on a 15-foot putt because there's no absolute expectation to put it in. But when you go down to 2 or 3 foot, something says, well, I should really get this, and I'm going to look an idiot if I don't, or let people down in a team. So that fear isn't real fear, it's psychological fear from the chimp brain that I'm not going to survive this if I let people down. I'm going to get rejected from the group. So 2 ideas. One is, how do I stop this sabotage from the prefrontal cortex? And 2 is, how do I manage my fight, flight or freeze response? An example of that in business would be just public speaking. Some people don't like public speaking, do they? It's nothing to do with public speaking. It's a predator fear. The chimp part of my brain says, don't go out there, you're being exposed to attack. It's nothing to do with public speaking. So you've got your chimp brain dragging you back, and you've got your human brain saying, actually, it's fine, it's just a presentation. And the chimp is typically much stronger than the human part of our brain, and that's why we typically lose that and then get a shot of adrenaline. So I'll show you a couple of practical things. I'm just worried about this. Just show you a couple of practical things that we can do. If you could just humour me for a minute. Would you mind just doing this movement for me? Just move your hands forward if you're comfortable doing that, and do it back the other way. Right, so looking at that, most people can do that obviously and easily. Now I want your right hand to go forward and your left one to go back, and look at the person next to you to see if they're actually doing that. That's both forward, see? That's both forward. Yep, David's got it. All right, so can you see, you've already proved yourself that you can do this movement, but to suddenly say, actually, I want you just to slightly do it differently. Your left brain operates this side of your body, the right brain operates this side of your body, just the way you're wired up. So when you're doing this, effectively, your non-dominant hand is just following your dominant hand, so it's very easy to do. But if you start saying, I want that to go forward and that to go backwards, you're asking the 2 sides of your brain to do different things. The reason for just showing you it is that could not be easier, could it? But you don't have the wiring for it yet. So to suddenly make a change in your swing is actually asking, in the middle of this unconscious process, to do something differently. And if you don't have the wiring for it, you'll revert back to the old one. And the more you think about the technique, the more you interfere with the prefrontal cortex, which means you're not going to have a fluid swing. Make some sense, kind of obviously? So the question would be, what do you do about it? One thing you could do is to recognise this model, which is Dr. Steve Peters. He was the psychiatrist of the Olympic cycling team. He works with Ronnie O'Sullivan recently, who's just won the world championship. So I'm pinching his model, but effectively where it comes from in biology is you don't have one brain, you have 3 brains, which in the womb are actually developing separately, and then they connect together and start communicating with each other. Brainstem at the back is about my survival. In the middle here, limbic system, emotional brain, which we're going to call the chimp brain in a minute, its only interest is in survival. So it's looking for a troop to belong to, it's looking for a territory, it's looking for a mate, it's looking for someone to lead them or to lead a troop. Its instinct is to stay safe, it's not interested in golf. And the frontal part is the human part, which now is where I'm perfectly happy of going out of my comfort zone or learning new things. And both of those feed things into the computer part of the brain, which is where we're on autopilot. So if you practice, deep practice, your swing to a point it's automatic, it's really in the computer. You can just do it naturally. And the only thing that's going to get in the way of that is if you start worrying about the part or worrying about the... So now you're out of the computer autopilot and now you're wanting to do it physically or slowly. Does that make some sense? So the goal here is, how do you calm the chimp part of your brain, which is perfectly a natural instinctive part to help you survive, but you're not in any real danger. The other part I wanted to show you this is just how it affects things like beliefs. I am going to show you how to do that, by the way. If you take a simple analogy, let's say a 10-foot putt curving down a hill. When you're standing here and you're about to play this putt, how confident are you that it's going to go in? What would you say? Just hit me with a percentage. How confident are you that you're going to hit that in? Right, so I've heard 20, 10 and 50. Is that right? 95%. 95%. Yeah. Okay, so in reality, you're going to give me a range of... but the issue is, I'm standing there and I feel 90% positive or confident, or I feel 10% all right. So let's just take the middle line of that 50% for a moment. So if one of the youngsters I'm working with... By the way, if I say to them, what are you thinking about on your home course in the first tee, if they generally will say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not thinking about anything, I just hit it down the middle. When they put them in a competition, a national competition, international competition, when they hit it in the lake, what were you thinking about on that tee? I didn't want to let people down. You know, it suddenly hit on me that it was so much runner. So what were you thinking about? Well, no, don't hit it in the lake. So what are they picturing? Yeah, and because they're good at golf, they're aiming unconsciously directly in the middle of the lake. They change their thinking. when they play in different environments, which is effectively the chimp brain saying, don't mess up. Right? In other words, don't hit it. So if you're 50% and you're standing here, the point is that 50% of your unconscious mind, which is running the show, moving this fluid swing, is now seeing it miss. So that even that 50% of my processing is seeing the ball go probably below the hole, because what's going to happen is I'm slightly going to hesitate. Is it the right line? Am I hitting the right? And if you hesitate, you will go below the hole, won't you? Which is why 90% of all misses tend to go below the hole, because we just decelerate slightly, which means it might not be in the right line. So that kind of thinking isn't what you're looking for. You need to hold the belief, and I'll explain that in a second, that 100%. Right, I need to explain that. So do you believe it's going in? Yes, 100%. Would you bet £1,000 on it? No, I'm not mad, because statistically, if you look at Dave Pouts we talked about earlier, but statistically every putt has been measured in the last 30 years on tour. The chance of that going in 10 foot is less than, but let's call it 25%. It's less than that, is reality. We get a false view of watching the TV because you're seeing the best players on the planet and they're playing the best that day, otherwise they're not on the TV. And if they're playing well, they're putting well. So you're getting a false view of it. So in reality, if you're saying 50%, I'm saying to this kid, so you think you're twice as good as the best players in the world if you're holding the view to 50%, and it's still not good enough because half your processing is missing. So you hold a belief because it's useful to you, not because it's true. So even if you just use the word possible, stand over this ball, is it possible it's going in? Yes. Come from that perspective on confidence. You play the ball with complete confidence and relaxation, and then it will go in the hole and you'll be celebrating, or it will slightly miss and you'll completely accept that, because they don't all go in. Right? So confidence is one of the things people talk about, and it's a belief we hold very often. Another way of looking at confidence I'm about to show you, this 100% confidence. Confidence based on chimp thinking is that my confidence is based on my ability to do something, and if I fail, I'm not going to survive or be accepted by the troops. So it's typically it's a fear response. So confidence based on chimp thinking it's based on my ability to do it, or my belief in my ability to do it. So the only way I can improve my confidence or your confidence with that thinking is I need to improve my skill.